Shalom. I'm Eddie Chumney of Hebraic Heritage Ministries, and we welcome you to this week's Focus Israel Report. In this week's report, we're going to give you an update on the current situation regarding the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as the prospects for war in the Middle East. First, in looking at the current situation regarding the peace process, in the last week, the Palestinians submitted a request to the United Nations, to the UN Security Council, to be recognized as a full member of the United Nations based upon the 1967 borders with Israel, with East Jerusalem as its capital. That request has now been referred to the UN Security Council Committee on the issue, and it could take weeks or even months in the committee for a decision to be made on the issue. There are 15 UN Security Council members, and 5 of them have veto rights and are permanent members as well. These 5 members are Russia, China, the United States, France, and Britain. And of the current 15 UN Security Council nations, 8 have already stated that they will support Palestinian statehood. And these 8 nations are Russia, China, India, South Africa, Brazil, Lebanon, Nigeria, and the African nation of Gabon. There are 2 nations who haven't yet decided how they are going to vote on the issue, and that is Colombia and Bosnia. In order for there to be a formal vote on any issue before the UN Security Council, they need 9 positive votes. So therefore, the Palestinians are trying to get either Colombia or Bosnia to vote in favor of a Palestinian state. As a result, Mahmoud Abbas, who is the president of the Palestinians, he is going to be traveling to Colombia on October the 11th to speak with Colombian President Juan Manuel Santos. The Colombian president has stated that as of now, he is going to vote against the Palestinian request, believing that it would be better if the Palestinians in Israel would resolve their differences through direct negotiations. In the quartet proposal that was made last week, that there be an outline for the resumption of direct talks, wherein a month after the Palestinian bid that was made at the United Nations on September the 23rd, that there would be a general agreement between Israel and the Palestinians on the framework for any peace talks, and then there would be proposals for borders and security given by each side in 3 months, and then the details be worked out in 6 months, with a full-fledged agreement, according to the plan, be done by December of 2012. Israel has accepted this plan with reservations. Diplomatic sources have noted that Israel's concerns are in 2 major areas, one being the timetable, which allocates only 3 months for negotiations on border and security issues, and the other is that the issue of Palestinian refugees and the recognition of a Jewish state are scheduled by the quartet to be later in the negotiations, and Israel wants all of these issues to be in one complete package. The Palestinians have said that they are not interested in having direct talks with Israel as long as Israel continues to build in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. Therefore, the Palestinians have stated that they are going to continue to try to pursue recognition of a Palestinian state through the United Nations. And the Palestinians said they can't be expected to have direct negotiations while Israel keeps building in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, which they say is preempting the outcome of the talks, and they say is a violation of international law. Yasser Abed Rabo, the Secretary General of the PLO, said after a Palestinian meeting on the issue that the quartet statement contained encouraging elements, but this is not enough to resume negotiations. He said the Palestinians interpreted the quartet's call, which referred to the peace plan known as the Roadmap, as including a demand for Israel to halt construction of settlements in the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And we consider the quartet's reference to the obligations of the Palestinians and Israeli sides under the Roadmap and the call for both sides to avoid provocative acts as a clear call for a definite halt to settlement activity in all of its forms. Meanwhile, a senior member of the PLO Fatah Central Committee, Abbas Zaki, told an interviewer that in any final status agreement between Israel and the Palestinians that it should be based on the June 4th 67 borders, and everyone knows that the PLO greater goal cannot be accomplished in one step. He noted that reaching the greater goal would be impossible initially and that revealing it would not be smart. If we say that we want to wipe Israel out, which would be the greater goal, come on, he said, it's too difficult. It's not acceptable policy to say so. Don't say these things to the world, he warned. The Palestinians need to keep it to themselves. The Palestinians believe that the quartet envoy Tony Blair is not a fair and neutral mediator of the conflict, and Palestinian officials have stated that they would like to see him removed as being a negotiator between the two sides because they say that he sounds too often like an Israeli diplomat. U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton is calling for the world to pressure Israelis and the Palestinians to enter into direct negotiations. She was on a recent visit in Egypt where she said that Egypt, the United States, the quartet, and everyone must be prepared to put pressure on both the Israelis and the Palestinians to try to move toward an agreement on outstanding issues. Addressing the contentious issues of settlements and the Palestinians' insistence that talks cannot begin until Israel agrees to freeze construction in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, Clinton said, if there was an agreement on borders, there would be no debate on the settlements because everyone would know which side of the border was Palestine and which was Israel. Meanwhile, in the past week, Israel announced that it has given preliminary approval to 1,100 new housing units in East Jerusalem. In an interview with the Jerusalem Post, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ruled out another settlement freeze and defended this expansion in the Gilo neighborhood of East Jerusalem. He said, we build in Jerusalem, period, the same way Israeli governments have been doing so for years, since the end of the 67 war. We build in Jewish neighborhoods, the Arabs build in Arab neighborhoods. That is the way the life of this city goes on and develops for its Jewish and non-Jewish residents alike. The United States and the European Union immediately condemned the announcement of this plan. And Britain and the European Union called on Israel to reverse the decision, as well as U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, saying that the new building would be counterproductive to the efforts to revive peace talks. A Palestinian spokesman, Nabil Radena, said Israel is challenging the will of the international community with the continued settlement policy. Britain's Foreign Secretary William Hague said settlement expansion was illegal and corrodes trust and undermines the basic principle of land for peace. We call on the government of Israel to revoke this decision. The European Union Foreign Policy Chief Catherine Ashton said she deplored the decision, adding, "I call on the Israeli authorities to reverse this plan." In Israel, the Israeli Knesset will be discussing a bill at the end of October to annex the West Bank. And this bill is being sponsored by Israeli Deputy Speaker Danny Danon. And the bill proposes that the Oslo Accords would be nullified and funding agreements between Israel and the Palestinians would stop as well. Meanwhile, in pledging security for Israel, U.S. President Barack Obama has agreed to supply Israel with bunker-busting bombs. And these bombs could be used in any possible Israeli strike against Iran and the building of its nuclear program. It is capable of penetrating deep beneath the surface. The bunker busters would be crucial to any airstrikes at Iran's nuclear sites. Benjamin Netanyahu has wanted the bunker busters for years, and as first reported by Newsweek, President Obama agreed to hand over 55 of the sophisticated and powerful weapons. Given Israel's track record of preemptive bombing strikes to destroy nuclear sites in neighboring nations, and Iran's ambitious and suspicious nuclear program, the American bunker busters may increase the chance of another Middle East war. And then, speaking of the prospects of another Middle East war, Syrian President Bashar Assad says that if NATO attacks Syria, he will fire missiles at Tel Aviv. Syrian President Bashar Assad warned Western countries that if Syria comes under NATO attack, it will fire missiles at Tel Aviv. Iranian semi-official news agency Fars reported. According to the report, Assad also reiterated that Syria will call on Hezbollah to launch such an intensive rocket and missile attack on Israel. All these events will happen in 3 hours, and in the following 3 hours, Iran will attack the U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf, and the U.S. and European interests will be targeted simultaneously, Assad said, according to the Fars news agency. Then it is reported by Debka File, an Israeli news gathering service, that according to Western intelligence sources, Syria, Iran, and Hezbollah have chartered a coordinated military operation for flattening metropolitan Tel Aviv, Israel's financial, industrial, and cultural center, with thousands of missiles launched simultaneously by all three, plus the Palestinian Hamas and Jihad Islami firing from the Gaza Strip. Israeli officials have never publicly admitted that this threat is on record, but Western intelligence sources have reported that Israel reacted with a warning of its own. If a single Syrian missile explodes in Tel Aviv, Damascus will be the first to pay the price, and if the missile offensive persists, one Syrian town after another will be destroyed. And if this indeed does happen, we could see the fulfillment of Isaiah chapter 17 when referring to the end of days. The prophecy there speaks of Damascus ceasing from being a city. Well, this is this week's update, and this week we shared with you the current situation regarding the Israeli-Palestinian peace process, as well as the prospects for war in the Middle East in the near future. Until we share with you next week's Focus Israel report, Shalom in Yeshua the Messiah. Amen.